Hello, and welcome to the Exponential Growth Podcast, powered by Analyst Investors. I'm your host, David Olivencia, co-founder of Analyst Investors, and a passionate advocate for leveraging innovation and technology to drive success. Let's get started. This is Exponential Growth. I also want to give gratitude to Salvi Media. They're the founding sponsor of the podcast. They're a premier executive content agency dedicated to crafting exceptional content and strategies that elevate companies' brands and their executives. They're creators of the Emmy Award-winning CEO series. I think many of you have seen that. We've also featured one of my portfolio companies, Analyst Investors and Hallow, on their CEO series. And they've had in-depth interviews with CEOs talking about their personal journeys and business experience. The CEO series can be found on Cheddar, Entrepreneur Magazine, Reach TV, and really want to thank Salvi Media for their support of the podcast. You can also follow them on social media, as well as they have a podcast studio in Chicago. Join them as well. So again, thank you, Salvi Media, for making this podcast possible. Today we got a very special show. Somebody I've known, and actually I thought about the numbers, and I'm almost too scared to say how long I've known this guy, almost 40 years-ish. And, and I got to be careful because, one thing is, I got all the dirt on him, but I got to be careful because he's got all the dirt on me. So we'll be very nice. But no, this is a leader who's got a long career in the technology consulting services industry at Accenture. And we'll talk more about his new role to the extent he wants to share at another, global leading consulting and executive search firm where he's at. But somebody I've watched his career progress, leader in supply chain automation, supply chain transformations, has worked with some of the largest companies in the world, advising them, educating them on all the cool things that are going on there, but also leader in Accenture in various spots and within, roughly 20 or so years at Accenture. And has helped grow that organization to be the world powerhouse that it is. So welcome to the podcast, dear friend from the hood, Elliott Segarra. Welcome, Elliott.
Dave, thank you so much for having me. It's exciting. Great to be here.
All right, great. We're gonna have some fun.
Let's have some fun.
Yeah.
Yes,
So the inside stuff that'll be like a bonus edition or something like that. So let's see. So I always like to start out a little bit about you, a little about your career, but tell people about you. Who's Elliott Segarra? And then we'll get into the funky stuff about the career.
Yeah, no, for sure. Appreciate that. So we grew up in the hood, so from Northwest Indiana. Grew up in a very blue collar family. Both my parents are of Puerto Rican descent. My mom was born here. My dad came here from the island when he was about 19 years old. Ended up in Northwest Indiana in the big steel craze. And so grew up in a little town called East Chicago, Indiana. Very, very Midwest, blue collar. I have an older sister, and kind of like my career. Like my childhood had just very standard childhood, and then when decided to make career choices, I started my career in the automotive industry, and I think growing up in East Chicago in a very blue collar set is the work ethic and the working hard. And early on in my career, when I went to college, I went to Butler to be a pharmacist, decided that I wasn't going to be a pharmacist, didn't want to be a pharmacist, thought I'd end up in like business and sales at some point, and then ended up in manufacturing right out of college. And it was because of a bet I made on myself. Right out of college, I think it's a little bit different, the recruiting, and maybe it is now than it was back then, but I didn't have a lot of offers coming out of college. And here I am, first generation, going to college thinking, hey, I've got my degree, like here are all the jobs coming at me. And there wasn't much. And part of it was me. I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know anybody that was out in the corporate world. I mean, I knew you, and you were part of that story. But I ended up in manufacturing. They liked me. They didn't have an office job for me, but they said, "Hey, Elliot, we can offer you a line position, making $10 an hour, building auto parts in Holland, Michigan, and take it from there." And so for me, it was about the opportunity. I knew I just needed to get in the door, do the work, and at some point to get recognized and move on. And so I did that. Everyone thought I was like, "You're moving where to do what?" And it was probably one of the best career moves I made. It started my professional career. I lasted 6 months on a manufacturing line, and I don't know, it was because I wasn't very good at making parts, or they saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And so they said, "Hey, why don't you work on a special project with suppliers?" And that's where I started to cut my teeth in supply chain, and took that opportunity into was an inventory analyst, and kind of worked within the manufacturing facility across the different supply chain disciplines. And then in about 6 years in, I had a decision to make. We just started having a family, and it was either go back to school, get my master's, like I followed you around your career, and you're a graduate of Notre Dame, go Irish, right? And so I had applied to the Mendoza School of Business to continue my education. At that time, Johnson Controls was going to pay for it, and so that was the route. At the same time, a friend of mine told me about an opportunity at Accenture, that they were hiring supply chain professionals, and if I was interested. So we were looking to pivot, get back to the area at some point, just didn't know when. And then, as things always work out, they never work out the way you planned them to. I thought a
What does
decision.
Mike Tyson say? Everybody has a plan to get punched in the
Punch your
face.
face. That's right. That's right. And so, I thought it was going to play out a certain way, and I was blessed that I had the opportunity to choose, either to continue education at Notre Dame and get my MBA, or pick up my family, move them back to the area, and take this job with Accenture. And I did what every smart man would do. I asked my wife, "All right, what do you want to do?" Right? At the time, I'm a proud girl dad. Let me say that. And at the time, my youngest was 8 weeks old, and my oldest was 2. And so, to change careers, and to it's just a different lifestyle, right? And I think it was going to require a team effort, right? It's going to require a network around us, so that I can focus on what I needed to do to be successful, and create a different life for my family. So she's like, let's go back home. So I took the job with Accenture. I spent 20 years there. I started in strategy consulting and supply chain. And then about 8 years ago, got into account management, and became a client account lead for one of our largest ag chem accounts in the Midwest. And yeah, it was a great career. It was great. I learned a lot. I focused on making sure that I surrounded myself with amazing people. Did interesting worked with some awesome clients. Was an internal leader within our Hispanic community, and loved all that. And then so did that for about 21 years, and then recently just decided to change gears a bit, and I just started with Korn Ferry about a month, 5 weeks ago. So yeah, so it's been interesting, right? This is only my third career move ever in the last 26 years. It's a little different when you get to our age, as opposed to when you're younger. But I've had a lot of great support from my mentors, great support from my family. We're empty nesters now, so it's kind of different. Kind of like what my priorities are right now.
Yeah. Well, so our listeners out there may not know Korn Ferry. Just maybe the quick thumbnail on
Yeah.
them, just to get a perspective.
So anything that has to do with talent and the person in an organization is what we do. So from attracting, retaining, developing talent, Korn Ferry is at the center of those capabilities. Korn Ferry has a long history of executive search and professional search, but there's also the supporting services around advisory, around talent acquisition that kind of round out the entire talent suite.
So, you look at, you've had the I guess the privilege, right, to work with amazing global brands in your career, right? Accenture, obviously, and I'm biased like you. We're both alumni there. Just an amazing global brand. What they've done in the last, since I've been there, I don't know, 30 plus years ago, and then I came back. How they've grown and amazing. But Korn Ferry also, when you think about brands of the services that you talked about, executive recruiting, board search, right? One of the world's icon in that space. So kudos to that, and an amazing background. The one thing I think some people might know this too, but mine is very similar, right? My mom was born here. All my family was born in Puerto Rico. All my grandparents were born in Puerto Rico. And then my father, he came here when he was 4 or 5-ish. So yeah, very similar in that aspect. And I think that's why we've hit it off, having that at least roots, and then it's been amazing to watch your career, and I guess both of our careers, progress along the way. Cool. So we've a lot of change in technology, right? So this exponential growth, want to talk about trends that you see from your vantage point. How do you think about when you invest? And then leadership, right? So let's go with the first one on trends, right? And so your lens, your view, and there's a couple, I guess. There's big companies, Accenture, even Korn Ferry, and how they're looking at it with talent. What do you see are the big exponential growth trends, tech trends, et cetera, that our listeners should be aware of?
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, it's. I'm not going to say it's obvious, but I think it's certainly clear. The evolution and the speed at which Gen AI is running at is going to be clearly the biggest disruptor we have right now. And I'm going to say it with at scale, right? Because I think companies today, and I don't have the stats, but I'm going to assume a lot of companies are either in the experimentation mode of AI, right? Like, okay, I want to understand what this is, maybe introduce it to their people, and like, here, go get to know it, be good enough to be dangerous. And I think it's, boards are asking for it, right? So it's just kind of like, how do I check the box to say I'm doing something in AI, right? So you got, I think there's a big bucket of organizations that are still there, experimenting. I think there's another bucket of folks that have gone through the experimentation, and now how do I prove out the value, right? And probably a small percentage, maybe 5, 10, maybe up to 15%, I would say, have done all that and are, leveraging AI to reinvent their business, right? In terms of, how they look at product development, how do they interact with their customers, and then how do they incent and, engage their people. And I think the biggest transition for AI is not the technology itself, but the interaction with people, right? And so if you think about what Gen AI does and what its capability, what it's doing right now, I know that there's a lot of skepticism and fear around what that does. I think it's just a huge opportunity for us to really think about what are the skills I'm going to need to be successful in an AI world, and leverage it, right? So it's not look at it as a threat or look at it as competition, but look at it as an enabler to how do I go be greater, right? Than using the capability and the tools. So I think the interaction of what it does to talent and people and engagement, I think it's going to be the biggest disruptor, but the biggest opportunity for us right now.
Yeah, one of my last podcasts with Lily Hill, she used the word like, how do you use it to be superhuman, right? You get out this tool and just be, 10x yourself, 10x, 100x, maybe 1,000x,
Yeah.
really think about it in that way. And, the other thing I think you mentioned that's really important for those listening, it's like, hey, this is coming. Get ready for it, right? Prepare yourself for this world. so that you're in a position to, take advantage of it, because there's going to be some drastic changes that are coming. And, we're both in the world of seeing what's happening and helping people adapt. And I mean, I can say this, and Elliot, I think you'd agree, is that we're seeing what's coming, and we would strongly, strongly encourage yourself to get educated, get up to speed, know how it's relevant to your role and your job and your company, and lead and learn and lead, because
Yeah.
you want longevity there. I think you'd agree with that, right, Elliot?
Yeah, 100%. And I think, Dave, if you look at this new generation of workforce that is coming up, right? They're native to this technology, right? They're using ChatGPT in their coursework at college. I have two daughters in college.
Too
And
much.
and so as an employer, right? Like I think I look back at my career, right? When having Microsoft tools like Excel and PowerPoint for and you had some systems to drive some reporting, right? We were used to that, so that's what we expect. So I think this new generation of workforce is going to expect that organizations are set up and have this type of capability enabled so that they can do their job, right? And I think that's not only look at it from a business accelerator, how to get value faster, but also as how do I attract talent?
Yeah, and give attract talent, and the best talent, right? I mean, that's the big, speaking. I mean, there was just some articles today about like Microsoft poaching open AI talent, and I thought of something like in the billions of dollars or something like that. Definitely hundreds of millions of dollars that they're just paying for the top talent in the space. And and that's one example, but you're going to see that trickle down. I mean, and also the other reason why you want to get knowledgeable in the space, because there's great demand for these skills, right? And you always want to go to where the puck is. Okay, cool. So AI is a big one. Any other, you got supply chain, you got other kind of perspectives. You're working with some interesting clients in the
Yeah.
past and now. Any other major techs that
I would
you want
say,
to
I think,
say that better
if I
bit?
look at how the application of AI in terms of disrupting, I think supply chain is one that is going to continue to evolve and grow. Being a supply chain practitioner, back in the day, it was a dumping ground for clerks, and it's a thankless job, right? Someone's always calling you and yelling at you because they don't have your parts, and you're chasing down suppliers and whatnot, and you've seen the evolution of the supply chain practitioner mature with technology, and now with visualization tools that started now, these tools around scenario modeling and predictive modeling, and then COVID, what that did for supply chain visibility. Supply chain is cool now, and I think it's cool now because of the enablement of the technology and its use of AI to string together use cases to drive value. So when I look at, it's a disrupt, but I think the application in supply chain, I think the application of AI in modern medicine is going to be interesting to watch. What it does to companies that, even in the ag space, that it can take 10 to 15 years to get a product to market, right? How AI can potentially shorten the path to market, and how quickly you can generate information to drive that. I think it's going to be important. How do we use AI to extend our lives, right? Longevity. We got more years behind us than in front of us, and that's I don't know if it's when you turn a certain age that you start to think about those things, but I think it's important to think about, all right, how can I leverage that technology, that information, to extend the things that I'm doing here. So
Yeah.
I would say, yeah, medicine, supply chain. I think to me, those are the two big areas where I see just huge impact. I mean, you've got within finance, right? You got those standard use cases on, in any type of customer service, right? You see a ton of use cases where that's
Yeah.
being used. I think the other opportunity is, like, from a consumer perspective, building trust. Like, how do I know I'm not talking to an AI bot,
Right.
right? And will that matter? Right? Will we move from that? And so I think transparency, honesty, from that perspective, I think is going to become important, more important.
Yeah, even videos, right? Now, even videos, they can take me, you, do, our voice, sample our voice and even our accents and all that kind of stuff and put stuff out so that, that will be, it's an interesting technology. I think on the medicine side, I think people don't truly get the rapid advances and the exponential growth around medicine. I say this, and I'm not surprised. I mean, something crazy could happen, right? But it wouldn't surprise me if I lived to 150 or beyond. And I don't think, and then if because of just with all the rapid advancements in medicine, so I get hit by a car, it's a different game, right?
Yeah, right, right.
But assuming that the way these regenerative medicines, precision medicine, there's things that are able to regenerate teeth, all kinds of stuff that are like happening, and they're happening so fast, right? Which is one of the reasons why we're doing this podcast, so people just can keep up with what's happening out there and just position themselves for success.
Yeah.
So thank you for your perspectives there.
Yeah.
So then the other part of this is like, okay, well, how do you invest and what do you think about investing, right? And we grew up similar backgrounds, right? We've very blue collar, very my father passed away and we had to actually pay some money for him, so it wasn't like I could get an inheritance or anything like
Right.
that.
That's right.
But we've been very successful in our corporate careers, and I've done some interesting things in investing on the venture side. But what would you say to our users, just like your philosophy on investing? How should they think about investing? There's all this exponential growth and change. How should they think about investing to the best win or position themselves for success?
I'll be transparent. Like, this is probably one of the areas where I'm like least I'm newer to, right? But for me, like my perspective is, invest in things that you believe in, right? I think there's something, there's energy in investing in organizations that are tied to, values and purpose that are important to you, right? Second, I would say, investing in the people, right? So if you're investing in an organization, make sure that there's investing in the people, because at the end of the day, it's all about relationships. And so, how do you make sure that you make yourself available if need be, right? If the situation presents itself, to mentor or to provide guidance or to develop people, because a lot of times, as not all of them succeed, right? And so how do you prepare folks for the event that it probably won't succeed? Like, so plan, kind of like plan for the worst but hope for the best kind of thing, right? But get people mentally prepared that, hey, at some point, this whatever this is, it comes to an end, either in a good way or in a bad way. And so how do you prepare yourself, even as an investor? Like, try not to tie too much emotion to it, because you never, you're putting in, you're making an investment in something that may or may not, the best batters, are 300 batters. So 3 out of 10
That's right.
times, you're in the Hall of Fame. So I think having that mentality to think about investing in that way, I think it helps with the anxiety, and I think it helps with, kind of putting things into perspective.
Yeah, no, it's good. I love the baseball analogy, right? It's like, sometimes you swing for the fence, right? Sometimes there's a little bit of luck. You go up to bat and you got runners on first, second, and third.
Yeah.
And then you have the chance for a grand slam, or you have the chance to strike out. It's the 3 out of 10, but you got to swing, right? And that's the other thing too. You got to swing. You can't, and so, I tell people, whether it's investing in stock, whether it's investing in startups, whether it's investing in bonds, crypto, whatever, you should, you got to step up to the plate. You got to take a swing, right? Or you're just kind of a fan watching things go by. but yeah, no, so that's
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny. Both my kids were in sports, and so my youngest, she played softball, and I think the lessons that you learn is, okay, well, very foundational, right? So my mentality around children's sports is a little bit different, right? Well, to me, it wasn't about the wins, about, okay, how do I prepare you to be a decent human being, and leverage the sports to drive lessons in leadership and how you show up. And I would ask her, yeah, she would say, I played terrible. I said, I struck out. I struck out 3 times. I said, well, did you swing? Yes. Then it's okay. Like, if you strike out swinging, to me, that's better than getting walked because you didn't swing. Right. So,
Right.
it's like, you swing, you try, you got to show up, you got to keep at it, be consistent. I think that's in anything, investing in leadership, and in kind of like pursuing what's next. You just got to keep moving forward. Right.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, no. And so you touched on leadership, right? Which is the next area. So, so all these exponential changes, everybody who's listening is leading in one way or the other.
Yeah.
And you've got, you were with Accenture, right? A leadership machine. Korn Ferry, a leadership machine. And then also very much, both of them are very world leaders in really technology and what's happening and all that kind of stuff. So it's like, there's one side of it, like, what are your leadership principles in general, right? But then maybe almost more importantly is, like, now we're in this world of a lot of exponential growth, a lot of change. Does anything change with leadership and leadership principles? Maybe what stays the same? Just your your philosophy and thoughts on leadership.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, there's a lot of uncertainty going on right now, right? There's a lot of volatility and uncertainty going on in the market, going on with organizations. We're seeing a lot of CEO turnover, right? In some industries, and as a leader, right? My philosophy is, I'm going to focus on the things that I can control. Like, I know there's a ton of noise going on out there. I know there's expectations to do things faster, do things bigger. But I quiet the noise by trying to focus on the things that are within my control, and how I respond to those things. I think we're in many cases, we are in uncharted territory when it comes to AI, when it comes to policies, when it comes to org structures and whatnot. And so it's so, as a leader, for me, I have to show up. I have to show up. It's not about me. I know that there's a lot of people out there that are feeling the anxiety. So as a leader, how do I kind of calm the storm, so to speak? How do I calm the folks to really, okay, let's focus on what's in front of us right here, right now, because that's all we can control. Like, tomorrow's too soon to worry about. Yesterday's too late, right? And so what can we do right now? And part of that is being an effective listener. I think it's, as a leader, right? They always say we have 2 ears and one mouth for a reason. I think, listen twice as much as we speak. But a leader is about listening, and meeting people where they are, right? Clients, teams, putting yourself in their shoes, right? Demonstrating empathy, just thinking about, seeing from their point of view, getting to know what's important to them, so that you can then, how do you solution something that's going to benefit everybody and make them successful. And and that's why, my leadership brand, if I had to brand it, it's, if you show up for me, I show up for you, right? And I think that's important, from a leadership perspective, because when it comes to building relationships and networking, right? You're the king of it, right? And there's work and network, and you got to make deposits before you can make withdrawals, like a bank account, right? So it's all about showing up, and in the good, and especially in the bad, especially if you have an authentic client relationship, right? And to me, that's goes beyond email. That is, you got a texting relationship with a client or a colleague, and when things aren't going well, and you show up, like, people remember that. People remember when, hey, when I didn't have opportunities, or when there are opportunities there, you were still showing up, checking in, making sure things were okay. Because when that opportunity changes, guess who's, you're going to be top of mind. You do that because you invest in the
Right.
individual, right? Not the role, not the title. You invest in the individual. So, my goal is how do I make you successful? How do I make the team successful? Regardless of where you sit in the organization, how big or not big your budgets are, but I'm investing in the actual person. I think that goes a long way when it comes to, leadership and showing up.
Yeah. No, I think very insightful points, and I think they almost stand the test of time. No matter how much technology innovate that gets thrown at it, these stand the test of time. I love there's a lot of noise out there. I say this, this is Steve Jobs said, hey, this was almost 20 years ago. He said, hey, it's a very noisy world out there. And there's not whatever message you want to get through to somebody, you got to be very crystal clear on what you want. And if you think about 20 years ago ish, when Steve Jobs came back to Apple, he mentioned that if it was noisy then, it is 10x, 20x, 100x noisy now, right? So it's noisy, and it's more noisy now, and I think it's going to get over time noisier. So you got to what you said, Elliott, right? What can you control and what's within your sphere of influence and focus, right? Because I think you'd agree, is like great leaders are able to do that because you can, with all this noise, you can get pulled in a lot of different directions, right? So that I thought was a great one. I thought the show up for me is how I show up for you, right? It's a principle that will stand the test of time, whatever tech is going on or whatever. But I like that. And then empathy, right? Now it doesn't matter what, really putting yourself in your team member's shoes and your boss's shoes and your whatever, your customer's shoes, or really understanding what they do. That to me stands the test of time. So I think those are all good,
Yeah.
good leadership principles.
Yeah, I even add like on the noise part, right? It's interesting how it's going to get noisier. Just the access that we have, right? I mean, I have two screens open right now, three, right? So on average, right? There's so much coming at us, and you know, every day's a practice, right? But it's how do you, we all feel because there's so much information out there that we have to, kind of receive and absorb and process and know more than, just because it's there doesn't mean that it's there for us. And so how do you step back, minimize the noise? Okay, like there's some things that I don't need to know, even though it's available but we have to be able to choose, what we consume, right? Regardless of it, the accessibility will always be there. It's now filtering. I think didn't exist
Right.
10, 15 years ago, right? And
Yeah.
so the alerts, the notifications, I mean, there's bells and whistles blowing left and right? So I try to just minimize that, just try to consume what I need to consume, and not worry that there's information out there that is not just is not enough time or space to do all that.
I was thinking as you were saying that, it's like I need an AI agent that just kind of just kind of simplifying and summarizing and just doing all the work, sucking in the information. But it's yeah, no, it's interesting times. But no, thanks for those perspectives on
Yeah.
leadership, Elliott. So, well, cool. Hey, well, thanks I know you got a ton of stuff going on, a new role, very busy, and in a great kind of leadership role there at Korn Ferry. So, thank you for jumping on, sharing your perspectives. How do people keep up with you on social media? They want to find
So
out more about Elliott.
yeah, LinkedIn is, I'm on LinkedIn. So you look me up, Elliott Segarra on LinkedIn. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook. Uh, I don't distinguish between any, so what you see is what you get. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I, try to manage again, when you think about social media, it's like, okay, there's the personal, there's the personal me, and then there's the business me. But if you think about it, there's just one me, right? And how do you bring that forward across consistently is always, I think, always the opportunity.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like I'm still, I think I'm always learning. I don't think anybody can say that they've got it figured out. I've hang out with some of the best. I follow some of the best. I think they're still figuring it out as well. Well, X and Elliott, well, thanks for jumping on, sharing your perspectives. Look forward to, maybe having you back on in a year or so to see how the
Yeah.
first year in your new role has been and continued success, man. Thanks for jumping
Thanks,
on.
Dave. I appreciate the time. Thanks for the invitation. This was fun.
All right, brother.
I